गणानान्वा गणपतिगुं हवामहे कविं कवीनामुपमश्रवस्तमम् ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणा ब्रह्मणस्पत आनश्रुण्वन्नो दिभिः सेदसादनम् प्रणो देवी सरस्वती आजिनीपदे दीनामवित्रयवतु गणेशाय नमः सरस्वत्यै नमः श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ओम्। ओम् साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वः प्रचोदयात्। ओम शांति शांति शांति। ओम नमो भगवते रुद्राय। ओम नमस्ते रुद्रमन्यव उतोत इषवे नमः। नमस्ते अस्तु धन्वने बाहुभ्यामुदते नमः। यात इदु शिवतमा शिवं बभूवते धनुः शिवा शरभ्यायात पतया नो रुद्रमृडय। याते रुद्र शिवा तनोरघोरा मापकाशिनी तया नस्तनुवा शन्तमया गिरिकुसहासदी। सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ओम शांति शांति शांति। स्वस्ति प्रजाभ्यः परिपालयन्ताम् न्यायेन मार्गेण मयि महिषाः। गोब्राह्मणेभ्यः शुभमस्तु नित्यम्। समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु। समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु। समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु। ओम शांति शांति शांति।
ईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ विश्वेश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वः प्रचोदयात्। Om Shri Sairam. Our most humble pranams at the lotus feet of Bhagwan Shri Sathya Sai Baba. It's our profound privilege to have with us for today's Sai Premarpanam none other than Dr. Siddhartha Raju, whom all of you would have definitely heard and seen multiple times and heard him singing in Prashanti Mandir. You would have seen him spreading the glory of Swami's Bhajans, and also along with his brothers like Ravi Kumar ji and Amay Deshpande ji, sharing deep insights as to how Swami would have loved the bhajans to be sung and what are his guidelines and how it should be sung. A warm welcome to you, Dr. Siddhartha. It's on behalf of Shri Sathya Sai Seva Organization, Navi Mumbai District. We extend you a hearty welcome. Though everybody would know you, just I would like to read a small, brief introduction about you, if you permit me. Hailing from Chennai, Tamil Nadu, Siddhartha is an assistant professor working in the Department of English at Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning. After being a part of the acclaimed Sundaram Bhajan group in Madras for several years, he became a part of the PBG group, that is Prashanti Mandir Bhajan group, where he joined the Swami's College, Prashanti Nilayam, to do his MBA. Following his graduation, he completed his MA in English on Bhagwan's command. He joined the faculty of SSHIL in 2011. In 2016, he was conferred the Sai Krishna Award for Best Teacher in the Prashanti Nilayam campus. In 2019, Siddhartha completed his doctoral studies in post-colonial studies. He has had the privilege of traveling with Bhagwan to Kodaikanal. He's an excellent singer, excellent stage actor, a playwright, vocal performer, and a speaker. And for many of you who would know and who would not know, recently he has published a book, From the Colonial to the Carnival, an English game and its Indian tale. He has co-authored it along with Dr. Rani, also from Anandpur campus. And it is indeed a pleasure to go through this book because it really signifies as to what extent Swami students go so deep into studying the whole culture and how they can easily weave around and correlate things and present it in such a manner. Of course, it's a wonderful literary work. I sincerely request, if you have time, definitely go through it. Sairam, over to you, Dr. Siddhartha Raju. Without any ado, I'll hand over to you so that we can hear more of you. Sairam to you. Thank you so much.
Offering myself at the lotus feet of my most beloved master, Bhagwan Shri Sathya Sai Baba. A very warm Sairam to all elders, brothers and sisters of the Sai family. Thank you so much, Uncle, for that introduction. You need not have included the bit about the book, but thank you for doing nevertheless. Of course, that has got nothing to do with my talk today. It will not feature in what I'm planning to cover over the next 80 to 90 minutes. This talk has been something that I have been deflecting for a while due to personal circumstances. But this time when Uncle called me last month and asked if I would speak this month, without a second thought, I said yes. And ever since I agreed to it, much like how it is usually when we are invited to speak in Swami's community, very often the deep dive is for the speaker. It is the speaker who benefits most from this experience. The first beneficiary, in fact, is the speaker himself or herself, because Swami gives another opportunity for you to reflect. And very often it is reflection, the constant reflection which brings out so many messages that Swami keeps away from us till that particular point of time. And every round of reflection gives a different message. Very often, these are messages that are very pertinent to the individual at that point of time. Today, my talk is going to be titled as Sai Bhajans, a way of life. And I think this is not something that I claim specifically to be capable or qualified to talk about. I think each and every one of us through this talk should be, I hope, will be able to relate to it in the context of our own journey with Swami, because definitely one thing that all of us in the Sai community like is bhajans, Sai Bhajans. I don't think anybody misses an opportunity to attend a bhajan. No family function is really complete unless we host a bhajan as part of the festivities. And of course, we all love tuning into Prashanti Mandir bhajans whenever the opportunity presents itself. So in that sense, all of us are qualified to participate in this session, which is titled as Sai Bhajans, a way of life. Sairam, gaye geet sada subh aur shaam, gaye geet sada subh aur shaam, har ek pal mein, har ek kshan mein, har ek pal क्षण में भजे हम सदा तेरो नाम, भजे हम सदा तेरो नाम, गाए गीत सदा सुबह शाम. I would like to begin with this bhajan because Gaye Geet Sada Subha aur Sham. Why morning and evening? Firstly, is that even possible? Now, if we are able to sing his name from morning to evening and from evening to morning, and if we are able to be in constant repetition of his name, that is what is called as constant integrated awareness. And I'm sure that over the past few months, many months actually, we have all had to go inwards to understand that awareness because of the restrictions that have been placed on us, because of the limitations that surround us. We have all had to dive inward to find him, to be able to be connected with him, because our regular routine methodologies were all put to test. We all had to find our own new ways, and definitely we have all adapted to it in our own little ways. But even as things begin to open up yet again, I'm sure we are all not the same, because this journey that we have been put through has definitely helped us realize that we can be connected to Swami regardless of what the external factors entail. Now, har ek pal mein, har ek kshan mein. Pal means, probably could, an interpretation of that line could be pal meaning every situation, and kshan means every moment. So is it possible to remember him, to be in his, to be chanting his name, to remember him and to think of him at every moment and in every situation? Now, to this question is what I would be looking to answer through the next 75-80 minutes. And I insist that, yes, it is possible. It is possible to remember and to chant his name in every situation and as well as in every moment. Now, let us see how that is possible. Because as we know Bhagwan, God in human form, he has given so many of us so many experiences of that situation as well as moment. There are so many moments that we have shared with him where he has given the most profound wisdom in the most simplest, using the most simplest analogies. And he has been there for us in so many situations. And we knew what he did in so many situations and at various times of the day. So Sai Bhajans, I believe, can give us that solution of finding him at every minute. So why I say a way of life is because let us take a typical day of any one of us. I'm going to take my typical day and I'm going to run the whole day through with you. And this is why I said this is likely to resonate with so many of us, because this is probably the average day of any one of us gathered here. And in each of those moments, what are those situations and what are those moments that Bhagwan has given as experience? Those are some of the experiences that I'm going to share with you. And how for each of those situations, there is a Sai Bhajan. There are more than one, but I'm just going to give a sample of one for every situation. And I'll probably give you a sample of a story related to Swami for each of those moments. Now, the typical day begins when we wake up, isn't it? When the physical body, that is, wakes up. Pratasmaranam Shri Guru Charanam Pratasmaranam Shri Guru Charanam Sai Charanam Shri Guru Charanam Pratasmaranam Shri Guru Charanam Brahmananda Pradayaka Charanam Brahmananda Pradayaka Charanam Sharanam Sharanam Sai Charanam Sharanam Sharanam Sai Charanam Pratasmaranam Shri Guru Charanam. So, in one of his Trai sessions with the students, Bhagwan was actually, that is the origin for this theme that I took up, because Swami discusses with the students, very, very playfully discusses a student's day in the hostel, right from the time they wake up till the night prayer and till they have milk and the night prayer. In that particular session, Bhagwan was talking about how students are so, deep asleep until it is time for Suprabhatam. And of course, Swami goes on to explain why Suprabhatam and what is the significance of Suprabhatam. But before that, Swami very joyfully reacts. He recalls that, sometimes students are sleeping, one's head is on top of the other fellow's leg, this fellow's leg is on that fellow's stomach, typically rolling, making all the students roll with laughter. Swami is recalling how the hostel life, the kind of bonding that takes place in hostel life. And then, of course, like I said, Swami comes and talks about how students come so sleepily for Suprabhatam. And Swami even enacts, the master actor and director that he is, he enacts saying how the boy who he comes and sits in the dining hall for Suprabhatam and he's actually falling asleep on the back of the boy in front of him. And this guy is, instead of waking him up, Swami says this fellow should be waking that fellow up. He is impacted by his sleepiness, and this fellow also leans forward and begins to doze during Suprabhatam. So now the day moves on, we have woken up and it's time for Suprabhatam. And talking about Suprabhatam, the loving Lord that he is, there are students who have studied, who have had the privilege and the blessing of studying in Ooty, in the early days of the Ooty school. And they recall with such fondness how Swami would come to wake them up for Suprabhatam. Now, the very idea of Suprabhatam being sung is to wake up Swami. And here is Swami who's already awake and ready. And he comes to the students, and these are these little children who are tucked away under thick rugs and blankets because of the cold weather. And at that time in the morning, Swami would come and gently tap them and wake them up and ask them to come to the dining hall for Suprabhatam. What a loving Lord he is. In fact, one of the brothers who had the privilege of staying with Swami in Prashanti Mandir, he would recall to me, and he said that there are so many days that Swami would, how he was telling me how Swami was restricted in a physical sense, restricted by the devotees. And he said that Swami would be up in the good old days, he would be up as early as 3:30. And Swami would get ready for the day, he said, using a torchlight. Because if Swami were to put on his room lights, then the residents of the ashram staying around Swami's premises would know that Swami has woken up. And they would then start waking up before Swami, thinking, how can we be sleeping when Swami has woken up? So then, it would be like Swami would wake up at 4, and then they would start waking up at 3:45, and Swami would have to get up earlier than them. And then it came to the point where Swami realized the solution is to get ready for the day using a torchlight. And that is the extent to which, this Lord of ours went physically, the hardships that he would put up, because something as simple as putting on a room light would mean the entire ashram waking up. And for the sake of their comfort, so that they could get up at their own convenience but be present for Suprabhatam, Swami using a torchlight to get ready. Now, coming to Suprabhatam itself, of course, we know the Suprabhatam. I'm not going to sing it. It's not the time for it either. But coming to Sai Bhajans, of course, there are so many Ishwarama Bhajans. I will just take one as a sample. Ishwara Priyatanaya Sai Narayana Sai Narayana Sathya Narayana Kali Yuga mein avatar liye Kali Yuga mein avatar liye Kan kan mein tera naam Sai Kan kan mein tera naam Kan kan mein tera naam Sai Kan kan mein tera naam. Suprabhatam is done. For many of us, the morning begins with a little bit of exercise, maybe a brisk walk down to the colony, around the colony or so on. Again, I would like to recall here the same brother whom I just referred to. He told me how within that small room that Swami would stay in the Prashanti Nilayam itself, in the main building before he moved out to Yajur Mandir, Swami in the first floor had a very, very basic room, basic in terms of furniture, but also a very small sized room. And within that room, every day in the morning, Swami would wake up and have a 45-minute walk. And he said this is one habit that he tried to imbibe from Swami, that is being active right after you wake up. And this is not something that would, for Swami who would be walking the whole day, both morning and evening, he would still be somebody who would wake up, and the first thing that he would do would be a brisk walk inside that room. And he referred to a very small room and said Swami would be going in circles around the room, because there would be the cot and there would be the table and the chair, but still just around that space, however limited it was, he would still make sure that he would do a brisk walk for 45 minutes. And again, after dinner, when Swami would retire for the day, he said Swami would go up and make it a point to take another brisk walk before he would go to bed. Now, when I recall this, when I'm sure many of us had to isolate ourselves in our own little rooms if we were dreaded, if we caught the virus sometime over the last 2 years, And in isolation, it was recommended that you do these brisk walks within the room and check your using the pulse oximeter. And it was quite at some point of time, I'm sure we all felt very claustrophobic, being stuck inside a single room with hardly 3-4 steps this way, that way. But I was just recalling how Swami would do that day in and day out, 2 times a day, for how many years, for decades, in fact, that he was doing that in that room of his. So a brisk morning walk is typically how the day has now started for many of us. And here is a bhajan that has the meaning, as well as could be the one that we could sing in this context, in this scenario or situation. So you're taking a walk, you're trying to, your heart is thumping, and here you are walking down the road. Hari Naam gaate chalo, Sai Naam gaate chalo, Hari Naam gaate chalo, Sai Naam gaate chalo, Madhav Govinda Govinda Madhav Naam gaate chalo, Madhav Govinda Govinda Madhav Naam gaate chalo, Hari Naam gaate chalo, Sai Naam gaate chalo. So that's the kind of mood with which we could use Sai Bhajans to go on a brisk walk. Talking about walking or exercising, which some of us probably also indulge in the morning, stretching ourselves. This is an incident that was recalled very fondly by one of our senior brothers in the Bhajan group. And he said that during one evening session, he was seated right in the front of the Bhajan group, and Swami came up. And those days, when Swami had finished his interviews a little earlier in the day, he would come and chat with all the bhajan boys inside the bhajan hall. He would come, sometimes he would stand there and indulge in small talk, asking what's happening in college and what are you singing today. The range of topics could be from the mundane to the ultimate. And this brother noticed that Swami was standing on top of the mic wire, one of the wires that was running. And Swami's big toe and the second toe was in between the two was the mic wire. And he thought Swami is standing and on the wire. When he moves, lest he should trip, or even generally it would be uncomfortable to be standing on top of the wire for a long period of time. So he gently tried to yank and move the wire away from under Swami's foot. And he says he was trying, and he says it didn't budge. So he thought, okay, maybe he needs to put a little bit more pressure, and he was giving more strength and using more strength and trying to pull. And he says it's almost as if it's stuck there. It's just refusing to move. And then now your ego is slightly hurt, isn't it? Because he says, I was wondering, what is this? I'm all well built and I'm not able to move a wire. And he's properly, but again, nobody else should notice. He couldn't possibly be moving too much. And while he's trying this, Swami has obviously noticed. Swami looks at him and says, what are you trying? He says, no, Swami, I just thought this wire is under your foot. I thought I'll just pull it out. And Swami smiled, and Swami remarked to him, saying that this is not what is holding it down is not some spiritual energy. It's just the purity that is associated with this body. And this is the exact same message that Swami had, in fact, remarked to one of the students when he indulged a student in an arm wrestling competition. And on that occasion, that student could not defeat Swami in an arm wrestling competition. And in his mind, he thought, Swami, I couldn't defeat you because you used your divine powers. How can I ever compete with divine power? And Swami remarked saying, no, I don't need to use my divine power for such things. And secondly, this is the physical power that I have comes from the fact that this body has not thought or done any harm for ever in its existence. And all it has done is love, and all it has done is give. And because of that action, there is so much of the physical energy, the physical strength that this body, the purity that gives physical strength, is the reason why you can never match it. So I remember these two incidents when I was thinking about how, if you go for a walk or you go for an exercise, again, there are messages that Swami has given us even in those situations, and there's a bhajan for it as well. Now we are done with our workout, so to say, and it is time to go for a shower. Govindeti sada snanam, Govindeti sada japam, Govindeti sada dhyanam, sada Govinda kirtanam, sada Govinda kirtanam, Govindeti sada snanam, Govindeti sada japam. There is a Sai Bhajan that tells us, bathe yourself in the name of Govinda. And again, the rest of the lines also go in tune with the theme of this talk. Think of his name, chant his name, meditate on his name. Sada Govinda Kirtanam. The name of his can be the only thing that pervades our body, mind, and soul, and every moment of our day. So here, this is a very interesting, rare bhajan which talks about bathing in the name of the Lord, right? And talking about the bath, or the time of the day which we dedicate ourselves to have a shower. On one occasion, one of our professors had the opportunity to be in Swami's room, and he was waiting in Swami's room when Swami was having his shower inside. And the great Veda Pandit Kamavadani Garu happened to be waiting with him. And when Kamavadani Garu came to know that Swami is having his bath, he stood outside the door and he was chanting the Rudram, because for him it was as if Abhishekam was going on for Lord Shiva inside, and Rudram had to be chanted. So in all his booming voice, he was chanting the Rudram. And this professor was not so proficient in chanting Vedam. And it seems he felt very bad. He recalled that he felt a touch bad, that I wish I knew the Rudram too, because I could have also had this opportunity. Swami has blessed me with the opportunity to be in the room, and Swami has gone inside for a shower. How I wish I could have also chanted when Lord Shiva is having, his Abhishekam is going on for Lord Shiva. And he was thinking thus, and Swami had finished, and Swami came out, and Swami sat with them. And even as Swami was talking to them, he suddenly turned to Kamavadani Garu and he asked, is it necessary to chant Vedam to be close to God? And this was the great learned Pandit who laughed in response to that question to Swami and said, Swami, not at all. So then Swami said, then what is necessary? He said, Swami, just chanting your name is enough. Can there be, the Veda is only a part of that. Only chanting your name is enough to be close to God. And Swami at that moment just turned to this professor and gave him his all-knowing smile, as if to say, why do you worry that you do not know the Vedam? Don't you have my name with you? Don't you have the opportunity to chant my name? Why does it have to be only through a Veda chant, so to say? Another funny incident that I recall is when Swami was invited to inaugurate a new addition to the primary school in Prashanthi. They had installed solar water heaters, and it was a big deal that back those many years ago that solar heaters were made available, and they wanted Swami to come to inaugurate the same. And Swami, as is the loving Lord, agreed, and he came down to the school, and they had made elaborate arrangements for Swami to open when the as a sign of inauguration. And it seems Swami turned the tap, and there was a big gush of water that came out. much more than they had anticipated, and everybody around was drenched, including Swami. And this put the teachers there in a spot of bother, because they were greatly worried and disappointed that the function had come down to Swami getting drenched there. And Swami, known to be the one who has the last word in every moment, Swami remarks saying, "You call me to inaugurate and I've had the first bath." Right? Leaving everybody in splits, but also salvaging the situation, making sure that nobody, the person concerned, did not get into any trouble. So now we have had our shower and we are ready to step out to work, leave for work. Most of us have a morning prayer that we chant before we step out to work. And the simplest prayer to have is that he removes whatever obstacles that stand in our way going to work. The obstacles, not necessarily referring to the traffic, of course, but the other obstacles that may be waiting for us at work. Vighna vinashaka gananatha, Vighna vinashaka gananatha, Gajanana Gajavardhana, Gajanana Gajavardhana, Gananatha, 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 Pranavaswarupa, Gananatha, Pranavaswarupa, Gananatha, Patipurishwara, Gananatha, Gajanana Gajavardhana, Gajanana Gajavardhana, Vighna vinashaka gananatha. Praying to Lord Ganesha, to the remover of all obstacles, and asking him to make sure that we have an obstacle-free day ahead of us at work. Now, the idea behind praying to God, of course, is not just asking him to remove the obstacles, but even if there are any, it's just making sure that he is always with you, taking him with us as we step out to work. Now, there is a brother of ours who studied a few years senior to me, who studied his MBA program in Prashanthi Nilayam. He had a phenomenal experience when he had joined Parthi for the first time. And he had done his engineering in his undergraduation, and he had come to Parthi for his MBA. And he was not, of course, like everybody else, he had his own ideas of what Prashanthi Nilayam meant, and he knew that he had come to the most holiest place, and a place which is teeming with miracles, so to say. And he told us, he shared with us how the first day when he was leaving the hostel to go to college, there is, in front of all of Swami's institutions, you know that there is a Ganesha who present in every building, in front of every building of Swami's institutions, in front of our hostel as well. And he saw, now, as unbelievable as the next couple of minutes may sound to many of us, he saw Ganesha step out of that idol that is there in front of the hostel. And Ganesha said, "I'm going to come with you." And Ganesha walked with him from hostel all the way to college. And at college, Ganesha went and sat where the Ganesha is in the college quadrangle. And again accompanied him back from college to hostel. And again, when he went back after lunch. and walked with him from hostel to Mandir, and entered and went and sat where the gate Ganesha is when he came to Mandir, and walked back with him from Mandir all the way to hostel. Now, this became an everyday practice for him, where God was walking with him, conversing with him, telling him things, talking to him, making him feel comfortable. Now, when I heard this, it was just absolutely surreal. So I asked him, in all my ignorance, I said, didn't you wonder how outlandish or unbelievable it is that Ganesha was walking with you? How did you, I mean, how nobody else noticed? He said, no, everybody was walking normally. I thought everybody else was also seeing him, but he's talking only to me. So I said, didn't you find this idea of Ganesha walking beside you? Didn't you find it unbelievable? He said, I thought it was very normal in Puttaparthi. Said, I thought this is Prashanti Nilayam. This is where God stays. So this might be a very routine affair for many people, I thought. So, and Ganesha, I told him not to discuss it with anybody, so he never did. So taking God to work, some people are so blessed that God walks with them. But taking God to work is something that we can do. And this is another experience that a very senior devotee had shared. She was living in the United States. She had moved to the United States. And when she used to have to drop her children at school and then proceed to work, typically it's not allowed that children can sit in the front seat of the car. And both the kids used to fight to want to sit in the front. So to dissuade both of them, she simply told them that the front seat is reserved for Swami. Both of you have to sit in the back. And obviously there was no argument after that. Both the kids used to sit in the back seat. She used to drop them at school and go ahead to work. And this became the regular practice for her. Many months after this, when she visited Puttaparthi and she had an opportunity to have an interview with Swami, Swami asked her, Swami said, you say that the front seat is for Swami, but you keep everything there. You put your keys there, you put your phone there, you put your handbag there. Then how is it Swami's seat? And that's when the enormity of the moment hit her, that even something as simple as that, which we say to the children, do we really mean it? So when we say we are taking Swami with us to work, how sincerely do we believe it? So this is another incident that came to mind, talking about taking Swami with us to work. Now we have gotten into our respective vehicles. We are en route to work. Is there a Sai Bhajan that tells us that Swami travel with us? Definitely. मेरा जीवन तेरे हवाले प्रभु, जिसे पग पग तू ही संभाले. मेरा जीवन तेरे हवाले प्रभु, जिसे पग पग तू ही संभाले. पग पग तू ही संभाले से हो, पग पग तू ही संभाले. पग पग तू ही संभाले से हो, पग पग तू ही संभाले. So we can take Swami forward with us when we are traveling onwards, isn't it? Of course, thanks to the Sri Sathya Sai Media Center and their lovely curated playlists that they come up with. They have one which says long drives playlist. For many of us, commuting has become a long drive, whether you like it or not. And some of us genuinely travel long distance. So there are long drive bhajans that we could probably listen to. And honestly, from my own experience, there's nothing like bhajans to handle traffic. Because if you start thinking about Swami, if you start thinking about the bhajan, if you're following the bhajan, keeping beat, you don't, the rigors of traffic stop affecting us. If all our mind and concentration is on the traffic jam itself, then there is chance for us to be more affected by it, rather distract ourselves with something else. And what better than to distract ourselves with his name, for which we may or may not find time the rest of the day. But definitely when you're traveling, there is an opportunity for us to chant and think of him. And talking about traveling in the car, one of the devotees had shared this incident with us when he had spoken to us when he came to address us in college. And he was telling us about how this was one of the first times that he was bringing his young son. His son was all of 7-8 years old, and he was coming for Swami's darshan. And because Swami, being the personality that Swami is, who can be very intimidating, right, to some, he was worried if his son would have that kind of an experience. He was very worried how Swami would respond to his son and how his son would take to Swami. And if there was a chance that he would get an interview. And he did get called for an interview. So he was a little worried about how the ice would break between his son and Swami. But Swami, of course, there is nobody whom he can't reach out to. And especially when he is with children, he says he becomes a child when he is with children. Swami took that extra effort to make his son feel close to him, to Swami. So Swami engaged him in small talk, and Swami asked him, what do you like? And that boy said, I like cars. And Swami said, oh, I also like cars. Which is your favorite car? And that boy started, talking about his favorite cars. So here was Swami finding a topic rather that interests the child and was hooking the child to get interested in him. So the boy and Swami had a very detailed discussion about cars and their features and so on. And Sir was telling us, saying it was so beautiful to see how with just one sentence, Swami just made everything that I had as worry just disappear. And then Swami told him the names of the cars that Swami has. And Swami said, this was the first car that I drove. I used to drive to Madras. And all of that conversation happened. And then finally, Swami asked that boy, do you know which is my most favorite car? And this boy thought, here is somebody who talks the same language, who likes the same thing that I like. And he said, Swami, what is your favorite car? And Swami touched the heart of that boy and said, your heart is where I travel, and that is where I sit. And that your body is my most favorite vehicle. And what a profound message to such a young boy, using the same context and using something that had the child's interest as well. So now we have traveled, we have made our journey, we have reached our work spot. And talking about work, like I said, this is the average day. This is the typical day for me, as I could imagine it. And I'm sure many of us also have a typical day like this. The workplace scenarios is something that oscillates. There are days that don't have anything challenging. There are days that have something very challenging, isn't it? Now, talking about challenges, I'm going to narrate an incident that happened to me a couple of years ago. This is when I was pursuing my PhD. And since Srinivasan uncle mentioned the book, I just thought I could share this incident because this relates to a book. So when I was doing my research, I came across a particular author, and I came across one particular work of that author. So I had not heard of that particular book. So I was surprised that after 2-3 years of having researched, how is it that that book was something I had not read or heard of before. So when I Googled to see if I could find the book online, it was not available. And the soft copy was not available, and a hard copy was available. And it said the hard copy cost 23,000 rupees or something to that effect, north of 20,000 rupees. And I'm not too sure if that book has anything of value for my research. It comes in the area of my research, but I'm not sure what I'm going to get out of it. So I was obviously in two minds about whether I should go ahead and buy the book. And it seemed like an outrageous price for a single book. But then at the same time, this is your research. You don't want to take chances. And there is only one copy of that available. So then my heart didn't allow me to to buy the book, simply because of the price involved. I thought for one book, it's a little too much. I could spend that money buying many books during the course of my research. So I told myself, till 3 years ago, for 3 years till now, you didn't know this book existed. Just forget you heard about it. Let it continue to not exist. Your research will go on. I told myself that, and I let that book go. Few months later, on account of my research work, I had taken leave from classes and I had come on research work to Madras. But after having come here, the gentleman who had promised me time suddenly became very busy. So he kept saying, meet me tomorrow, call me tomorrow. The next day he would say, call me after 2 days. And then my time was running out because I couldn't come back again one more time taking off from classes, and I was in a hurry to finish my PhD. So at the end of the week, I was quite low because a whole week had gone and there was zero utility in that visit of mine towards my research. And having missed classes and come, I felt doubly sad that, it's not fair that I've taken leave and come with nothing to show. There was nothing that I could go back to show as work having done in the last 1 week. And just before I was going to leave the next morning. The previous evening, I opened my cupboard in my room, and it's a cupboard that has things from my school and from my college days, things that I've just stored inside. So I opened the cupboard and I was seeing if there was anything that I could take with me to Puttaparthi. Maybe I could read something in the airport and see if there's anything I could find. And I found a few books stacked there. And as I'm going through the books, suddenly I thought, wait, I think I saw something. And I saw it looked like that book, which I had found 3 months ago. So I thought my eyes are playing tricks on me. I'm so desperate for that book that I'm finding the book in my cupboard. And I take that book out. It is that book. And I'm thinking, what is this? How is this book sitting in my cupboard? And I opened to see if I've marked when I bought it or anything of that sort. In 2003, somebody had gifted it for my birthday. In 2003. And I was searching for the book in 2019. And that person has said, Dear Siddhartha, happy birthday. And they had signed, and the date they have mentioned, my birthday, 2003. Firstly, I couldn't even recall who that person was. I mean, here was somebody who had given me a gift, and I was wondering, who is this? This name doesn't sound familiar. In 2003, I was trying to place, okay, I was in first year college. Who was this? Then I remembered who the person was. And this was gifted to me, and I had not opened it even. I just put it inside my cupboard. And here I was finding it 16 years later in my own cupboard. And that was the year the book was published. It was published in September, and this person gave it to me by the end of the year. Then it struck me. I immediately held the book so close. Here was Swami's way of telling me, it's okay. I'm still in control. Take it. Here's the book. Go ahead. And the book was definitely useful, no doubt. And when I was going back, I was thinking, here I am thinking that I reached Swami only in 2006. And Swami told me in 2009 to do my PhD. And by the time I started, it was 2013. And by the time I was finishing, it was 2019. But here is Swami who has sent me material for my PhD in 2003. So the challenges that we have at work, coming back to where we were, definitely we all have challenges at work. Definitely we will have highs at work. There will be moments where we will be, there'll be a lot of triumphs, there'll be a lot of victories, a lot of success. And there will definitely be failures, there will be disappointments. So firstly, coming back to bhajans itself, are there any bhajans? Yes, definitely. If you have challenges, Sankata Harana, Shri Sai Ramana, Sankata Harana. Please, you are the one who can remove my sankats, all the things that pose as challenges in front of me at work. Now, Another bhajan which came to mind, and I found a very interesting analogy in this scenario. Sai Mata Pita Dina Bandhu Sakha Tere Charanon mein Sai Mera Koti Pranam Mujhe Shakti Do Mere Sai Shiva Mujhe Bhakti Do Mere Sai Shiva Mujhe Mukti Do Mere Sai Shiva. Why this bhajan particularly? Because we can sing this when you're facing a challenge. Swami, give me the strength. Give me the strength to face this issue, this test of yours. Definitely there are going to be challenges, but give me the strength to face it. Also, Swami, can you give me the devotion, the bhakti to make me realize that this test was given by you for me. If I have the devotion, I can face the test. That I know, Swami, you have given. Swami, can you give me mukti? Can you liberate me from this problem? Can you remove this problem entirely? Right? So I thought this bhajan appeared to me because I thought here, yes, there is a different perspective to Shakti, Bhakti and Mukti. Even our everyday problems, to face them, we need strength. And to face the problem, we need the faith that this problem was handed to us by him. If we have that, this test was posed by him for us, then the perspective to the problem itself changes. Because now it's a question of what Swami has handpicked and given you. And if he's given you the strength for it, and eventually he'll make sure that he liberates you from that problem. Now, I know somebody who has somebody in Parthi who told me how very routinely when this person has work-related problems, and it's a very mental task that this person, mental kind of, a lot of mental energy that they have to spend at work. This person said, whenever I come to Kulwant Hall and sit for bhajans, in those 45 minutes, the kind of solutions that I come up with for work, the kind of problem solving that happens for me in those 45 minutes while I'm singing bhajans. It's not that they come and disconnect from bhajans. Come there, sit there and sing, but somewhere the tangles are being removed just by the act of sitting there for bhajans. So we do not know the kind of power that Sai Bhajans have. At such a subtle level, they could be working on us. And that is another point that I wanted to share. And one of my teachers at Prashanti Nilayam, I had once asked him, it was a very reflective question. So I said, sir, how do we know that we have progressed on this journey? Is there any way, any touchstone by which we can reflect to check if we have made any progress at all? Because we're all making our efforts, but have we progressed? Is there any way to find out? And this teacher of mine, he thought about it, and then he said, when you treat both success and failure the same way, that is one way to know you have made some progress. So the challenges, the triumphs, the failures that we face at work, can we treat all of them the same? If we are able to not get carried away by the ride that goes up and down, then we can be sure that we are making progress. In fact, that is exactly what Rudyard Kipling writes in one of his poems. He says, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same. He says, both of them are imposters. Both triumph and disaster are both imposters. And he says, can you treat both of them the same? If you can, and the title of the poem is If, and it has a whole lot of, if you can do this, if you can do that. In one of those lines, he says, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat both the imposters just the same. And that's exactly what this sir of mine had also mentioned to me, saying, can you treat the success that comes your way, can you treat the failure that comes your way the same? Meaning, you are not affected by the failure, you are not affected by the success. It's easy to not be affected by one, but both of them have the tendency to take us on a ride. So, in their own ways. So, can you treat both of them the same? So, these are some of the scenarios that we face at work. Now, we have finished work, we have faced all those challenges. We've been liberated by a few of them from a few of them. We've kept a few pending for the next day, and we have come back home. We come back home, and typically we go and freshen up at the, having come back home at the end of the day. So here we are freshening up after a long day. Har har Gange, har har Gange, har har Gange, har har Gange. He Nataraja, he Shivaraja, har 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 Gange. He Nataraja, he Shivaraja, har 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 Gange. Har har Gange, har har Gange. Of course, in some of our taps, Ganga is a little stingy based on the season, based on which part of the city we live. But yes, this is another opportunity where even when we are freshening up, there is a bhajan that we can sing and we can think of him. Now, talking about freshening up, one evening, Bhagwan came out for darshan, and just as he stepped out and he started walking amidst the students realized or noticed that Bhagwan's eyes were red. And they were all trying to wonder what happened. Swami's eyes are so, bloodshot, very, very red. So when Swami finished darshan and came back, some of the students in the front ventured to ask, saying, Swami's eyes are so red. Swami, what happened? And Swami said, I am not like you boys. I was washing my face before coming for darshan. And I don't let the tap run when I'm putting soap on my face. I close the tap. So when I had soap on my face, I couldn't find the tap. So when I opened my eyes to find the tap, some soap went into my eye, and that's why it's red. Now, the message was only for the students about how to be so judicious and conserve water. But here was the Lord enacting a whole drama of allowing soap to go into his eyes and pretending that he could not find the tap when he needed it. If we can't find him when we need him, we know what we go through. And here is the Lord telling he couldn't find something as simple as the tap in his washroom. So the message here was Swami telling the students, and that's why he began the story by narrating, saying, I'm not like you boys. Also indicating his omnipresence by saying, do you know how much water you waste when you are shaving? Do you know how much water you waste when you are washing your face? So he never loses an opportunity to drive one message or the other. Like I said, the messages range from the mundane to the most profound. But water conservation, how to be judicious. And Swami was very particular about not wasting any resource, whether it was water, whether it was electricity, whether it was money. Electricity, I haven't had the blessing of having an interview, but I have read in so many books and I've heard from so many students that Swami would personally switch off the fan and light before he would come out of the interview room. Even if there is somebody else to do it, who will do it, no, Swami would do it himself. And he was so particular about not wasting electricity, not wasting water. So we have freshened up. We are lighting the lamp. It's probably evening prayer time for some of us. So when we light the lamp, there are so many songs that so many bhajans that we could sing. Here is one of them. Jeevan Jyoti tum ho sai, prem ki jyot jalao sai, prem ki jyot jalao, प्रेम की ज्योत जलाओ साई, प्रेम की ज्योत जलाओ, जीवन के इन अंधियारों में साई दीप जलाओ, साई जलाओ, Sathya Sai Deep Jala Prem Ki Jyot Jala Sai Prem Ki Jyot Jala. One of the most senior Prashanti Mandir singers of yesteryears, Mohan Rao Garu, he recalls how back in the day when they used to visit Parthi and come, he was residing in Chennai at that time. They would have bhajans in their house in Chennai very regularly on particular days of the week. And so he always had this. So they used to have bhajans at home. And on one particular day, the person who used to come home to deliver flowers didn't show up. And it was nearing bhajan time, and Mohan Rao sir was very worried whether the flowers would reach in time for bhajans or not. And suddenly, out of nowhere, that flower vendor appeared. He gave the flowers, sir received them, he placed them at the altar, and bhajan started. So sir, over a period of time, started wondering, Swami, we are doing bhajans here so diligently, just like you would like. How do we know that you are listening to us? How do we know that you are present here for our bhajans? And this was a question that was rankling in his mind. So the next time he goes to Prashanti Nilayam for a function, and Swami calls him for an interview, and Swami is talking to him. And then very casually, Swami says, your father wonders, he tells the children, your father wonders if I am present at your house for bhajans. Ask him who came and gave flowers that day. And then it hit him that Swami is referring to that incident where that day when he thought it was the flower vendor who came, but it was actually Swami who came and gave flowers. Reaffirming to him that I'm always there to make sure that, at your house. Now, the reverse, another very senior devotee, Professor Kasturi, he writes how, and of course, Swami had his own way of dealing with Professor Kasturi, giving him love and stick at the same time. So, Professor Kasturi was in Prashanti Nilayam and Swami was away for a long period. And so the routine of the ashram would continue, and every day evening there were bhajans. And so Professor Kasturi is also having the same question. Swami, how do we know you are here? You are away in Bangalore and Madras and Hyderabad, and we are doing bhajans here in Parthi. How do we know you are here? And so when Swami comes back, he asks him, Swami, we are doing bhajans when you're not in Prashanti Nilayam. It's so difficult. How do we know you are here? And Swami said, well, why do you want my presence? Okay, why should I show my presence? You're not doing bhajan for the sake of, you're not doing bhajan with full feeling. How many times you keep checking the clock to see if it's time for Aarti or not? And that's when Professor Kasturi says, he realizes that this is Swami giving me the stick, but also telling me of his omnipresence by telling what exactly he was doing. So Swami says, you keep looking at the clock to see if it's 6 o'clock, if it's time for Aarti. Why should I show such people any signs of grace that I'm present there for bhajans? While all along proving that he definitely was there for bhajans. So we have lit our lamps. We have finished coming back home. For some of us, an evening might involve a little bit of shopping. It could involve buying some essentials for the family. Talking of shopping, one can never miss mentioning going shopping as Swami students when Swami takes the students out of town. When he takes us to Kodaikanal, or he would take us anywhere. So Swami would give all of us money and specifically give a lot of instructions when he would give the money. And Swami would say, the first rule is don't bargain with the vendors. When they tell you a price, just pay. Because so many of the vendors, especially in Kodaikanal, would get so happy knowing that Swami would come, because that would mean an inflow of tourists, of devotees, which would be in good business for them. And Swami would say, I am giving you the money. Why should you bargain? The money is what I am giving you, right? So I do not want you to bargain anything with the vendors, the first rule. And then Swami would say, especially if there are these little boys selling cotton candy, make sure you buy from them and have some cotton candy. And then Swami would say, buy things for your parents. Swami would stress on this saying, especially because he would say, see, during your summer vacation, you could be spending time with your parents, but I have brought you with me. So they have sacrificed their time with you by sending you with Swami. So when you go back, if you give something for them, they will feel so happy. They'll feel that they'll feel so blessed that something has come from what Swami has given you. So these are some of the generic rules that Swami would emphasize with every batch. Swami would say, don't bargain, get something for your parents, and so on. So when our batch went to Kodai in the year 2009, when we were also told the same set of instructions. We were taken to the market and we were allowed to just roam around the market and go to the different shops. And somehow there were about 38 or 39 of us. Each of us went and bought something for our parents. And we did our own shopping and we came back to Sai Shruti. And after we came back, when we discussed amongst ourselves, we realized that each of us had thought of getting something for Swami. And though it was not spoken, it just happened that each of us had bought something for Swami. Now, and no two of us had bought the same thing for Swami. So when Swami came in the afternoon, Swami would usually come and ask the boys, so what did you buy? Show me. He would check, he would ask how much did you pay for it and bless the items, especially those that are being given to parents. So when the first boy went, he showed and he offered something to Swami. He said, Swami, I bought this for you. The second boy went, he showed something. So one boy had bought very fine, soft handkerchiefs for Swami. Somebody had bought an orange shawl almost in the same color as Swami's robe, so that, in Kodaikanal, even if Swami were to wear a shawl, it would not look out of place. Somebody had bought a foot cushion for Swami. Somebody had bought gloves for Swami, because Swami would like to keep a glove in his mouth. Like somebody bought a bag for vibhuti packets. Somebody bought a bag for keeping letters, devotees' letters, a tray for something else. Now, when I was standing there, I was thinking, here we think that there is nothing that Swami needs per se, but somehow without any communication going amongst ourselves, each of us has found a different thing that Swami would like to use. So all of us showed. Swami blessed all the items. Swami was very happy and he said, no, you keep it as Swami's blessings. Now the last boy who went, he went up to Swami and he gave Swami a tube of mouth ulcer gel, because Swami had remarked the previous evening during when we were having snacks. Swami said, I'm not eating snacks, I have a mouth ulcer, I'm not eating fruits this evening. And here was this boy who found yet another gift, yet another offering of love. And definitely for me, it was the best offering of love that I had seen that afternoon. And he was trying to coax Swami into using that gel. And he said, Swami, this is, if you put this more. And Swami, at first, of course, refused. But that love of that boy was so overpowering. That was the only offering that Swami picked up and passed it to the brother who was in Swami's room and said, keep it, give it to me at night. So when I think of shopping, obviously I think of Kodaikanal and my trip. One of the best moments for me in my trip to Kodaikanal with Swami was how they say, as many types of people are there are those many ways to reach God. As many types of people are there are those many ways to love God as well. Each of us can find some unique way in which we love God, and it will never be the same with another person. That is the beauty of our relationship with the Lord, because I don't know, I'm falling short of words because of whenever I recall that moment, it is such a powerful moment for me to remember how there is always a unique way by which you can love God. So we are done shopping, and it's time for dinner. It's supper time, and here is another very interesting story that I heard from from a very senior devotee. So this auntie is in USA, and this auntie would make whatever they make for lunch and dinner. They would offer a small part of it to Swami at the altar and keep it as Naivedyam at Swami's altar. So on this particular day, she had made sambar. She had placed it at Swami's altar. They all sat down to eat, and just as they started eating, her husband remarked, saying, "Hey, there's no salt in the sambar." So she tasted and she felt, "Yeah, there's no salt." Somebody went to the kitchen, brought salt. They added salt. They finished lunch. Now, parallelly, here in Vrindavan, this auntie's mother is sitting at darshan, and Swami comes near her at darshan and looks at her and says, "No salt in the Naivedyam." And Swami walks away. So this auntie didn't understand what Swami is talking about. And the daughter calls the mother in the evening and says, "So what happened at darshan today?" "I don't know. Swami just came to me. Swami came and said, no salt in the Naivedyam." And then this auntie realized that when they added salt to the sambar that was on the table. But nobody remembered to go add sambar to the cup that was kept for Naivedyam for Swami. So then she said, "Amma, Swami is referring to this message is for me. It's coming through you, but there is a reason why he came and told you this. This is what happened at home." So he is definitely, verily, the unseen guest at every meal, isn't he? And it's all to do with the faith and the conviction with which we carry out the action. So again, a bhajan that I could remember in this scenario. Jaya Jagadish Hare, Jaya Govinda Hare, Nityananda Brahmananda, Jaya Gopala Hare, Arunachala Shiva, Trishuladhari Shiva, Harinarayana, Sai Narayana, Jaya Devi Bharati, Vidyadaini, Annapurna Mata, Jaya Devi Bharati, Vidyadaini, Annapurna Mata. So we are done with dinner, and up next, many of the ladies in the audience will definitely guess what is coming next. That is washing dishes, making sure that the kitchen is spick and span at the end of the day. So washing dishes comes the next part of our day. And here too, let me tell you, there is like I said, Har ek pal mein, har ek kshan mein. Here also there is an incident that involves one of our brothers. And this brother had the privilege of serving Swami in his residence. And sometime preceding this incident, for a week before this, there were a lot of doubts in his mind about how, whether is he progressing, is he improving as a person, what about the good in him, what about the bad in him, and so on. And these were questions that were running in his mind. And one afternoon, after lunch, it was his turn to wash the vessels after lunch. And he says there were lots of cups and lots of pans and plates, and all the food was there in the sink. And he was standing there alone and he was washing them. And untimely, not a time when Bhagwan would usually come down to the kitchen, at least, he says, Swami would definitely retire in the afternoon, and we know what is the time he usually comes down. But that day, because, and I'm sure many of us have felt this at many moments of our life, the sincere seeker will always find his answers. And the Lord that we have will ensure that he reaches the answer to us somehow. Right? He will find the most ingenious ways by which he will reach the answer to us. So here was this brother who was a very sincere seeker at that moment. And he says, Swami walked into the kitchen and Swami asked him, what are you doing? And he firstly was taken aback that Swami had come at that time, and he very sheepishly said, Swami, I'm just washing the vessels. And at that time, in his hand was a cup which was a vessel which had the leftover rasam of that day's lunch. And as Swami was standing there and he says, Swami, I'm just washing the vessels, he says, Swami opened the tap and water gushed into that vessel and it started filling up. And the water is diluting the rasam, but the whole vessel is now filled with water that is not looking too pleasant, right? Because it is mixed with rasam. And the vessel is quickly filling up, and he's wondering why Swami is not letting go of the tap or closing the tap. It's filled up and it starts spilling over. And it's a liquid that's, water of a very strange color that is now overflowing from the vessel. And he's wondering why, what is Swami doing? And then as he's watching, he says, as he was watching, the water filled up so much to the extent that all the leftover rasam had flown out. And there was now clear water left in that vessel. And he says that was the message for him. And Swami told him that, fill your mind with good thoughts, and eventually all these thoughts will leave, all these thoughts will go out. And the only way to get rid of these thoughts that are bothering you is filling your mind with good thoughts all the time. Now, what a scenario, what a situation to be stuck in, washing vessels when Swami walks in and having a vessel with leftover food, but Swami doesn't miss the opportunity to drive home such a deep lesson. On another occasion, Swami used a similar analogy. Swami spoke about how the coffee cup, when it is, when you drink coffee and later if you observe, the coffee level would leave a mark in the cup at different points of time when we have consumed the coffee in that. And Swami said that it will be very difficult to wash that, but if you fill it with water and keep, after that in one swipe you can very easily remove the mark. And Swami said, like that, fill your heart with namasmaran. If you fill it with namasmaran, all the negative thoughts, the bad thoughts, which may creep in despite our best efforts, they can be washed away. And one of the only ways to do that is namasmaran. And here is a bhajan which has a very, very significant line that talks about exactly that. Sathya Sai Padambujam Bhajare Manasa Nirantaram. Sathya Sai Padambujam Bhajare Manasa Nirantaram. Parama Pavitram Pavana Charanam. Parama Pavitram Pavana Charanam This is the line. Kalimal dahanam Shri Guru Charanam. Kalimal dahanam Shri Guru Charanam. Bhava bhayanashana durita nivarana. Patti Purishwara Pankaja Charanam. Bhajare manasa nirantaram. Bhaja bhajare manasa nirantaram. The effect of all the negativity that may creep into us can be washed away if we are able to constantly think of him, if we are able to constantly sing his name. Now we are done washing dishes as well. It's time to go to bed. And of course, here also the night prayer comes in, but here is also another bhajan which carries the same. We would love to go to drift to sleep, and who would not like to see Swami when they are asleep in the dreams? Because Swami coming in our dreams is only when Swami is thinking of us, and not necessarily when we are thinking of Swami. When Swami thinks of us, he comes in our dreams, and Swami has so many times said very, very emphatically that I'm giving you darshan in my dreams. Shayan sapan mein saiyo, shayan sapan mein saiyo, gagan pavan mein saiyo, gagan pavan mein saiyo, shayan sapan mein saiyo, nayan nayan mein saiyo, nayan nayan mein saiyo, janam maran mein saiyo, janan maran mein saiyo, 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 saiyo. Listening to the Sai Bhagavatam, almost like how Parikshit listened to the Bhagavatam, definitely is one way by which we can be liberated. And a thought that I want to share is that one need not worry that one didn't physically stay with Swami, because that was an opportunity that was given to very, very few people to be physically with him. And here I recall one of our teachers whose family came to Swami in 1960s, early 1960s. And when their family came, the first time they reached Puttaparthi, the residents of the ashram, they chided them, saying, "You have come so late. You have come so late because Swami has stopped going to Chitravati Sands. What's the point of coming now to Swami?" And imagine this being told in 1960, being told you have come late. Those who came in the 70s, late 70s, were told, "You're too late. Swami is not taking Shivaratri Lingam in front of all the devotees. Now you have come too late." If you came in the late 80s, they said that, interviews are not a guarantee when you leave town. It's only, Swami is so busy now. If you came in the 90s, people said, "Swami's got no time. He's busy with so many projects, the university, the super specialty hospitals, the water project." All of that was, a very busy period in the 90s. If you came in the mid 2000s, they said Swami is not giving interviews to everybody, or it's not easy to get an interview. Then they said you came too late. Swami is not walking amidst the devotees. Swami is coming only in the car. So who really came on time to Swami? Who really reached Swami? Who really stayed with Swami? The privilege, the blessing to stay with him, a handful in the history of the avatar. But none of that needs to matter with us, because we can have Swami stay with us all the time if we are thinking of Swami all the time. Because Swami is definitely thinking of us, whether we think of him or not. So it's the cycle is complete, the connection is complete if we consciously keep that connect alive. And I'd like to narrate an incident of how Swami is always with us and Swami is always guarding and guiding us. So this happened to a sister who happened to, she was visiting Bangalore for a function, and she had to be back to report to work the next day morning. And the only available mode of transportation for her was a bus, a sleeper bus at one particular time. She had to reach back. So she left the venue of the function, and she got caught in traffic. And she was very worried if she would reach the bus stand in time and catch the bus. So when she asked the auto driver, when she told him which bus stand she had to go, and she told him the bus, the auto driver dismissed her, saying, "You're not going to make it. It's a 1:30 bus. We are definitely not going to reach on time, and the bus will not wait. It's a government bus. They will leave at 1:30 no matter what." And she was very worried about what would her plan B be. What should she do? She can't afford to stay back in Bangalore. She had to reach the same day. And she says, as she was, the time is ticking, and they're nowhere near the bus stand. And finally, when they reach the bus stand, it is 1:40. And she thought, having come so far, let me just go and see if the bus is there by any chance. Nothing else, there's no other option in front of her. And she says she reached the bus stand, and the conductor asked her, "Are you 17? Seat number 17? Get in, waiting for you only, get in." And she was shocked that the bus is still there. She quickly got in. She settled in her seat. And then, after the bus started, it suddenly struck her, how did he know that I am the person who's in that seat number? Because there were other empty seats in the bus as well. How did he know my seat number? So she asks the conductor, "First of all, I was told you leave at 1:30. How did you stay back till 1:40? And how did you know my seat number?" And he says, the conductor says, "Somebody called me at 1:15 and said, seat number 17, one lady is traveling alone. Please wait. She's on the way." So we waited. We thought you must have called. She said, how on earth will I have the conductor's mobile phone number? How would she even know who's the conductor and what is his mobile phone number? She said, "No, I didn't call. No, somebody called. I got the call and said I was asked to wait." So we waited. And she says, at that moment, when in all her panic, she says she didn't even remember necessarily to pray to Swami. And she says that's why she was so moved, because Swami, it didn't strike me to pray to you, but you still were there for me. You were still there guiding and guarding me. So that is how much he is a part of our lives. Now the question is, how much of him do we keep in our daily life? So in conclusion, we saw different moments of our everyday life. I know some of my analogies, some of my examples, some of my bhajans were a little far stretched for that moment, but definitely there are so many more bhajans as for those different moments of our life. And we saw these different moments in life with Bhagwan, how Bhagwan was some incident related to Bhagwan in all these moments of life. And we saw all these moments through bhajans as well. So let us conclude this session with the one bhajan that tells us everything we need to know on how to lead life. And in fact, the first two lines refer to bhajans itself, and as well as his name. So I would like to conclude my talk because it's nearly 8 o'clock, and I thank you for your patient listening. And I would like to thank the Sathya Sai Seva organizations, Navi Mumbai, for this opportunity to reflect on this wonderful gift of Sai Bhajans. and to allow me to share my thoughts on Sai Bhajans, the impact that it has, and it can have in our lives, and also for the opportunity to recollect these so many wonderful leelas of Swami. Thank you so much for this opportunity one more time. And like I said, we can conclude with this bhajan, which tells us everything we need to know.
बिना सुख शांति नहीं, हरि भजन बिना सुख शांति नहीं, हरि नाम बिना आनंद नहीं, हरि नाम बिना आनंद नहीं,
हरि नाम बिना
हरि भजन बिना सुख शांति नहीं, जप जान बिना संयोग नहीं, जप जान बिना प्रभु दर्श बिना प्रज्ञान नहीं, दय धर्म बिना सत्कर्म नहीं, भगवान बिना कोई अपना नहीं, हरि नाम बिना परमात्मा नहीं, हरि नाम बिना परमात्मा नहीं, हरि भजन बिना शांति नहीं, हरि भजन बिना हरि नाम बिना आनंद नहीं, हरि नाम बिना आनंद नहीं, हरि भजन बिना हरि नाम बिना आनंद नहीं, हरि भजन बिना सुख शांति नहीं, सुख शांति नहीं, सुख शांति नहीं।
Sairam, Brother Siddhartha. Thank you, Swami, for sending you as an instrument on this wonderful evening where you took up the very favorite topic, Sai Bhajans, a way of life. And with such simplicity and profundity, you explained how you could run through your daily charter at all times, remembering the name of God and being immersed in Swami's bhajans, starting from Sairam, 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 gaye geet sada subh aur sham. Aptly starting the whole program with this bhajan, you went on as to how you could begin the day with prayer to Swami, inviting the Guru, Pratasmaranam Shri Guru Charanam, remembering the Mother Sai and Mother of Sai, Ishwaramba Priyatanaya, during Snan, Govindeti Sada Snanam, which is a rare bhajan which you presented it so beautifully. Right from each activity that you do plan in your day, including when you go to work, how you can pray to Swami to remove all the obstacles at work, and again correlating with the bhajan and with experiences. It has been a magnificent presentation to all of us in such a simple and profound way, and a very unique concept of emphasizing how Sai Bhajans could be a way of life. It is for the first time that I've heard such a kind of novel presentation of the activity throughout the day, culminating into how Swami always has emphasized that Namasmaranam is the easiest way of salvation in this Kali Yuga. Taking God to work, your scintillating experience of how that book you could locate in your cupboard when Swami implanted it in 2003, when you needed that book in 2019 for your research work, and you came to Swami's fold in 2006. Amazing. That is how Swami enters. You never know when Swami is into your lives. That simple example of that mic which was held by Swami's toes, that purity gives tremendous physical strength. That's a great takeaway. Absolutely great takeaway for all of us. Example of the conversation with that devotee's small child, where the parents had that anxiety as to how Swami would converse with him. That car that he says, finally Swami says, it is in the heart. This is your vehicle where I sit, and this is the car. Such a profound message Swami has implanted into that child that he would carry it forever. And of course, very nicely you said how the Sai Bhajans have this power of subtly untangling all the problems. When the gentleman you were referring to, who had a lot of tensions, and when in that 45 minutes, all those will untangle and he would get solutions while he was focusing only on bhajans. Driving home a very small point as to how water needs to be conserved with that great experience when Swami pointed out. It's a wonderful experience that you shared. And finally, you also, during the supper time, you said, verily the unseen guest in every meal. What a magnificent way of correlating that Swami is always there, never doubt his presence. You need to really look at it and feel his presence. And also the anecdote about, I think it's related to Dr. Sundarayar, where Swami, while washing the vessels, he said in that rasam, how it was flown out with the flowing water and it became clean. That is, fill your mind with good thoughts. In nutshell, what I would say, Dr. Siddhartha Raju, we are really deeply indebted to you for explaining the concept of living with bhajans and making Sai Bhajans a way of life in such a lucid way, and correlating with bhajans, and also giving a lot of examples, experiences. Thank you so much for your offering, and we definitely wish we'll have many more sessions with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Uncle. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Like I said, the first beneficiary, the first recipient of grace, of messages, of insight is the speaker. So thank you for yet another opportunity to ruminate on Swami's message.
Thank you so much. And we are very, very happy that today we have the presence of our All India President, Nimish Pandya uncle here. Can I request Nimishji, if he is there, sir, to please speak a few words? Then we'll follow with Swami's message for the day in the Aarti part of it.
He's not there. He's not there.
Okay, Sairam, that's perfect. Absolutely okay, Auntie. So I'll read out the Swami's message for the day. Again, it's a coincidence how Swami, implants it. I was searching for a message on Nama Sankirtanam, and the first message that came to me from my archive was one of the Swami's messages in one of his divine discourses, which reads as under: life is a pilgrimage where man drags his feet along the rough and thorny road. With the name of God on his lips, he will have no thirst. With the form of God in his heart, he will feel no exhaustion. The company of the holy will inspire him to travel in hope and faith. The awareness that God is within call, that he's ever near and never long in coming, will lend strength to his limbs and courage to his eyes. Recite the name with prema and have the form fixed in the mind's eye. It's a lamp shedding light in the recess of your heart. It will drive away the inner darkness as well as the outer. Peace within and love without. That is the sign of person engrossed in perpetual namasmarana. Om Shri Sairam. Thank you once again, Brother Siddhartha Raju, for this wonderful satsang with your mellifluous bhajan offerings, which really transported us all to Prashanti Nilayam. We'll conclude with Om Tat Sat Shri to Aarti. Sairam.
Om Tat Sat Shri Narayana Tu Purushottama Guru Tu Siddha Buddha Tu Skanda Vinayaka Savita Pavaka Tu Savita Pavaka Tu Brahmamazatu Yahava Shakti Tu Yeshu Pita Prabhu Tu Rudra Vishnu Tu Rama Krishna Tu Rahimata Tu Rahimata Tu Vasudeva Go Vishwarupa Tu Chidananda Hari Tu Advitiya Tu Akala Nirbhaya Atmalinga Shiva Tu Atmalinga Shiva Tu Atmalinga Shiva Tu
Asato ma Satgamaya Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amrutam Gamaya.
Om Jai Jagadish Hare Swami Sathya Sai Hare Bhakta Jana Samrakshaka Bhakta Jana Samrakshaka Pati Maheshwara Om Jai Jagadish Hare Shashivadana Shrikara Sarva Pranapati Swami Sarva Pranapati Ashrita Kalpalatika Ashrita Kalpalatika Avatandhava Om Jai Jagadish Hare Mata Pita Guru Daivamu Mariyantayu Nive Swami Mariyantayu Nive Nada Brahma Jagannatha Nada Brahma Jagannatha Nagena Shayana Om Jai Jagadish Hare Omkara Rupa Ojasvi Ho Sai Mahadeva Sathya Sai Mahadeva Mangala Arati Andhuko Mangala Arati Andhuko Mandala Giridhari Om Jai Jagadish Hare Narayana Narayana Om Satya Narayana 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 Om Narayana Narayana Om Satya Narayana Narayana Om Satya Narayana Narayana Om Om Jai Sadgurudeva. Narayana Narayana Om Satya Narayana 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 Om Narayana Narayana Om Satya Narayana Narayana Om Satya Narayana Narayana Om Jai Sadgurudeva. Narayana Narayana Om Satya Narayana 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 Om Narayana Narayana Om Satya Narayana Narayana Om Satya Narayana Narayana Om Jai Sadgurudeva. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Samastalokaah Sukhino Bhavantu. Samastalokaah Sukhino Bhavantu. Samastalokaah Sukhino Bhavantu. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Jai Bolo Bhagwan Shri Sathya Sai Baba Ji ki Jai.
परमं पवित्रं बाबा विभूतिं परमं विचित्रं लीला विभूतिं परमार्थइष्टार्थमोक्षप्रदानं बाबा विभूतिं इदमाश्रयामि परमं पवित्रं बाबा विभूतिं परमं विचित्रं लीला विभूतिं परमार्थइष्टार्थमोक्षप्रदानं बाबा विभूतिं इदमाश्रयामि परमं पवित्रं बाबा विभूतिं परमं विचित्रं लीला विभूतिं परमार्थइष्टार्थमोक्षप्रदानं बाबा विभूतिं इदमाश्रयामि
Sairam, I request everyone to please turn on the videos if it's okay. We can have a online screenshots. Sairam, thank you so much, Dr. Siddhartha, once again for your wonderful satsang and for being with us today, taking out your time. Thank you so much. And sooner or later, we will have your physical presence here. Sairam.
Sairam. Sairam.
Sairam. Sairam.
Sairam, everyone. Sairam.
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 Sairam, Sairam.
Sairam sir, Sairam.
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 Sairam sir, Sairam.
Sairam. Today I was supposed to go to Puttaparthi. Good, I heard everything. Today I was supposed to go to Puttaparthi. Good, I heard everything at home and I felt Swami is present with me now in my house.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's
Really,
all.
I hearing this. Really, I'm telling you, I felt like he's there with me.
Sure. That's how Swami works.
Yeah. Tears roll down my eyes.
Sairam.
Sairam.
Sairam. Sairam. Let's call it a day. Sairam.